Okay, good morning, everyone. I think we can start. We reach 30 participants, and thank you for joining this EMFA Talk that probably will be the last one before the summer. Also because we have to focus on the final stage of the Media Pluralism Monitor. As you probably know, because I recognize many of the names that are joining today, we have done we have organized these meetings, these EMFA talks every second week, every second Monday, in order to discuss all together some of the issues that are raised by the European Media Freedom Act, some of the articles, and in general the interpretation of the Act, in order to develop altogether some streams of interpretation, to have this instrument to interpret this instrument in the best way possible to allow its full implementation in the best way possible. And we have organized these events as Center for Media Pluralism and Media Freedom at the European University Institute, and in cooperation also with some friends and stakeholders that have shared the same interest. I mean, to understand better how to implement the Act and how to go ahead, I mean, with the common path in this. And in particular, the European Federation of Journalists, that has been always cooperative and present in our discussions. And today we speak again about Article 5 of the European Media Freedom Act, the one that is dealing with the public service media, the independence and the funding of PSM. We have already discussed of it, but we think that there is room for a deeper analysis, also trying to take into account what is already happening, whether there are particular problems at national level, what the member states are trying to do to comply with Article 5. And so today we have with us Professor Giulio Enea Vigevani, who is full professor of constitutional law at University of Milano-Bicocca. Judit Bayer, associate professor in the Department of Communication of the Budapest Business University, and Josef Lusser, head of EU Affairs and long-standing member of the EBU Legal and Policy Committee. He has led EBU PSM funding and governance group for the past few years, and he is very much into Article 5 indeed, Article 5 of the European Media Freedom Act. The organization of the EMFA Talk are the usual one, presentations of the speakers, 15 minutes, maximum 20 each, and then comments. We have our usual and wonderful commentator, that is Renate Schroeder, from the director of the European Federation of Journalists. And then we will open the floor for discussion. I will be the moderator of this meeting today, this webinar. Pierluigi is online, and probably Pierluigi Parco is online, the director of the Center for Media Pluralism and Media Freedom, but he will probably join later. So I think that we can start then with the first presentation. I give the floor to Giulio Enea Vigevani for his first analysis and maybe a focus also on the Italian case. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Giulio, for being with us.
Thank you, Elda. Thank you, everybody. What I'd like to do today is just give you an overview of the current Italian situation when it comes to implementing, actually not implementing, at least so far, Article 5 of the European Media Freedom Act. Italy is, as I say, often happens, quite a revealing case. On one hand, it shows how important these new EU rules are. And on the other hand, Italy illustrates the kind of resistance and, I say, difficulties that arise when governments are asked to give up control over one of the main tools for shaping public opinion. At the national level, recent events in Italy show how difficult it is to move forward when political leaders are clearly determined to maintain their grip on public service media. But I say there is another element, and it might be even more worrying. It is a kind of public resignation. We are seeing in Italy a widening gap between, on one side, the constitutional and now the European principle of impartiality, pluralism, independence of public broadcasting, and on the other, the day-to-day reality, which continues to, I say, ignore these principles. And the gap is increasingly accepted as normal, I say. Let me give you just an example. In an interview last October, Giuliano Amato, the former prime minister, former president of the Constitutional Court, well-known public figure, said in defense of the Constitutional Court, I quote, "The Constitutional Court isn't right. I hate to say it because it's unfair to right, but the Constitutional Court can't be divided up along party lines." The message, in my opinion, is pretty clear. There is nothing more to do for RAI. It's a sort of lost cause. So, the entry into force of Article 5 could be a real chance not just to update Italian legislation, but to challenge in some way a long-standing tradition that treats public broadcasting as a kind of political prize for government, a political prize for the parliamentary majority. And also at EU level, Article 5 is something new. It marks really a shift in the EU's approach from its traditional skepticism toward public service media and their public funding to a much more positive and proactive stance. But there is a condition: editorial independence and the distance from political power must be properly guaranteed. Now, unlike other parts of the regulation, in my view, Article 5 is not just a set of broad guidelines, because it lays down concrete, detailed obligation so that any national rule failing to comply with this is immediately incompatible with EU law. Specifically, the three key obligations are ensuring the independence of management and board members, providing adequate and stable funding, and the third, establishing an independent media regulator with guarantees of autonomy. And I'm referring, for instance, to provision concerning the appointment and dismissal of top management, such as the requirement for transparent and non-discriminatory procedures, the guarantee of a term of office long enough to ensure actual independence, and safeguards against the arbitrary dismissal of director and board members. And these are the areas where Italian law falls short, especially when it comes to the rule governing the appointment and dismissal of RAI's CEO and board. So, what's the situation in Italy right now? Basically, I could say that Parliament is in a kind of deadlock. The most recent move was a motion from the opposition rejected at the beginning of April, simply asking the government to start implementing the Media Freedom Act with a focus on reforming RAI's governance. In the meantime, the majority, that's quite interesting, is doing everything it can to delay the appointment of RAI's new president, an appointment that should have happened last autumn, last September. Why the delay? Because the preferred candidate of the government doesn't have the vote to get confirmed by the Parliamentary Oversight Committee. And the result is a paradox. The committee is effectively blocked, and no meaningful discussion on implementing the regulation can move forward. That's the situation. In fact, we have several bills currently sitting in Parliament, but are unlikely to be examined before August, before Article 5 comes into force. And in any case, the proposals put forward by the majority are very limited. They more or less return to the Gaspari law, the law of 2004, which was itself of doubtful compatibility with the Constitution and with the EU law. And I think these proposals certainly do not go far enough to meet the standards set out in Article 5. So, again, what happens next? It seems quite likely that the European Commission could open infringement proceedings against Italy. But in my opinion, more interesting, I think there's also a strong chance that an Italian court could refer the matter to the Court of Justice to ask whether our current legislation is in line with the European Media Freedom Act. And this could be of great interest even outside Italy, because it could give the Court of Justice the chance to rule not only on the substance of the regulation, but also on the legal basis used by the EU legislator, which has been debated, and on the scope of the principles and rules laid down in the European Media Freedom Act. And on this point, I personally think the choice of Article 114 of the treaty is justified and makes sense, especially if we take seriously the EU's role in defending democracy and fundamental rights. In the end, the European Media Freedom Act, especially when it comes to public service media, is not about a new stage in the European integration. It's about something deeper. It's about the constitutionalism, the roots of the democratic constitutionalism. It's about setting clear rules to limit the influence of political but also economic power over the formation of public opinion and the democratic debate. That's why I believe, and I'm finishing, that it's crucial to monitor closely how these new rules are being implemented country by country, as you are doing. And as Italians, I think we have an extra responsibility, because we have been a negative example for decades. And we risk continuing to be one for a long time to come. I stop here. I think I'm in time, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Giulio, also for respecting so well the time limit. So I pass the floor then to Judit for her presentation. Thank you for being with us, first of all.
Thank you. I'm also honored and happy to be here and to be invited and to share my presentation, among others. Just a minute, let me share my slides. Yes. I think I have to start my... Like this. Does it work?
Yes, I see.
Yeah. Okay. So I give as title the illusion of legal compliance, and I'm sure that you will get it, the meaning by the end of my presentation. And I would also like to invoke.
Sorry to interrupt. We don't
Ah,
see the slides any
you
longer.
don't see the presentation. Okay. So what do you see?
Now
Do you see me,
a
right?
black
Black screen.
Blank screen. Okay. Just a minute. Stop sharing and share again. This time, maybe?
Yes, now.
Yes.
Oh,
now
fantastic. Thank you. So I would also invoke a quote from Orwell's Animal Farm, which I found very fitting, the way the leading animals distort the meaning of the words as they start abusing their power. So just very briefly, as also Professor Vigevani referred to that, what is called public service media is very often, in fact, the state media in practically all over the world, except for the Western European states. And this used to be no different in Hungary as well. Before the political transition, after the political transition, although there was an act in 1996 which introduced a very detailed regulation following the German methodology, which, however, didn't work in Hungary amidst the Hungarian political culture, because the civil society representation was in practice used as the booty field of political parties. But still, there was a certain division of power, more or less, and even this defective system was significantly deteriorated right after the Orbán Viktor grabbed the power in 2010. The media law was the first law that was passed, and it looks like it was intentionally designed to evade control in terms of the structuring of the public service broadcasting. At that time, of course, this legal control or external monitoring could have come at most from the Commission on the basis of the communication on the application of state aid rules to public service broadcasting, which requires mainly the transparency of financing and monitoring by independent authority, that the financing corresponds to the programming plans, and an impact assessment before the new services. All of these were violated then in the coming years by the public service television. And I would just like, my presentation is very brief. In fact, I would like to show you a picture basically, which tries to depict this trick of deception, how the illusion of broadcasting cooperation have been created, how the text of the law has been twisted, and thereby the rule of law is being violated. So maybe this picture is a bit complicated, but I am innocent, I promise. So what you see in the middle with dark blue, the Duna Limited Liability Company, is literally the public service broadcaster of Hungary. It has a CEO. However, this corporation has be made an empty shell. So everything, what you see with blue, basically on the left side, is a remnant of the old system that has been created by the 1996 law, and which follows the logic of German regulation of public service broadcasting with boards of trustees. So the DUNA is practically owned, legally owned by a public foundation for public service. Both of them have been created by law, by the parliament. The public foundation has a board of trustees, which are elected by parliament. It's a balanced representation, except that one member, who is also the president of this trustee board, is delegated by the Media Council, MC stands here for the Media Council. And this trustee board has a really broad set of competences and a long list of detailed rules regulate how it is set up, how it should vote, its whole functioning methodology. Yet, whatever it does remains irrelevant, because overseeing DUNA doesn't make any difference, because it's not DUNA who makes the programs, who makes the public service programs, and it's not DUNA which receives the funding. We even have a public service code which describes the remits. There is a public service body which applies the public service code. There is a public service budget body which oversees the budget and gives an opinion to MTVA. Now, what is MTVA? So what you see with orange, those are the Fidesz-dominated bodies, and the ones which effectively have power and which effectively realize the state broadcasting in Hungary. MTVA has been newly created by the law in 2010. It officially performs the management of DUNA. It receives all the state funds for public service broadcasting, and it officially allocates this budget. So this is all written in the law. It produces the public service programs, including concluding the contracts for program creation, but it also decides about the programming, where the public service budget body can give merely an opinion, as says. And MTVA is also the employer of the whole broadcasting corporation, so all the employers, all the employees, all the editors, all media workers practically. And DUNA LTD has merely 50 employees, which is basically their CEO and some administrative workers, whereas thousands of employees are employed by MTVA and supervised through the director of MTVA. This director is appointed by the chairperson of the Media Council. So the Media Council is a part of the National Regulatory Authority, which is elected by the parliament. After 2014, it has been improved a little bit, and it's simply elected by the parliament with a simple majority, if that can be regarded as an approval. This also proposes the CEO. So even though the CEO of DUNA, just to be on the safe side, even though this CEO is appointed by the trustees, the proposal on the persons is made, because there are more persons, is made by the Media Council. But as I said, this is still not relevant, because it's the director of the MTVA who takes the de facto decisions about allocating the budget and producing the public service programs. And this person is directly appointed and dismissed by the chairperson of the Media Council, who is also the head of the National Regulatory Authority. And as such, he used to be directly delegated by the Prime Minister. This has been changed in 2042, so he's elected now by the Parliament, but with a simple majority, so which means practically the governmental majority. So what we have here is an illusion of a controlled and monitored public service broadcasting body. And what is a bit frustrating is that that doesn't seem to be, so this lacks clarity for the external observers. And even though there are so many descriptions and reports on the lack of independence of the Hungarian media, I always feel that the main meaning gets lost among the complicated structure that is intentionally made to divert attention from the main trick, from the meaning of this all. So whether there is a compliance with EMFA at the level of text, of course, wonderful compliance, everything is there. There is the appointment of the DUNA's CEO, the dismissal, the supervision, the public service remit, the monitoring, everything is given. However, nothing like that is given for MTVA, which operates perfectly without supervision, in tandem with the Media Council, which is a perfectly government-dominated body. There is no shielding from direct government influence whatsoever, and that the director of MTVA has been found several times an executor of the governmental propaganda. And just one thing that EMFA's, I think the subsection 3 says that plenty of resources should be given for the public service broadcasting. Well, there are plenty of resources in terms of the Hungarian GDP and generally the state budget. For example, in comparison to public education, I think high-level education, it's about the same level of budgetary resources which are awarded for MTVA for the operation. And it's not a problem that it will be other finance. However, all this financing is used to spread the governmental propaganda. This has also been already established a couple of times, the whole scheme that I'm describing. However, as said, amidst the several pages of detailed description of how the DUNA is actually set up and structures, the main message is often lost, that MTVA is the de facto broadcaster and it's not subject to any kind of monitoring. So what I would recommend, very importantly, I still think that EMFA is a very useful instrument, and but when this whole system is corrupted, including all the monitoring bodies and mutual appointments, then it's really difficult to. So it's a rule of law problem, as I'm sure that you get it. But still, I think it's important to point out the discrepancy between the public service broadcaster on paper and the public service broadcaster in function. So whoever will employ EMFA, and hopefully it will happen, deploy, I want to say, should simply declare or point out that the emperor has no clothes and shouldn't fall to this juggling with the words. It would be possible to rely on the academic literature, which has already professionally developed criteria for functional independence and de facto independence. For example, by examining the actual appointment and the dismissal mechanisms of those who have the de facto power over allocation of the resources, over employment of the media workers, and over the programming decisions. All of this is happening at the MTVA. It's possible to monitor the content of the MTVA, and we have plenty of information and evidence on how biased it is. And it would be possible to monitor the internal processes and the decisions. Again, there is evidence available on that. And I have been a big supporter of the idea of relying on the communication on state aid for public service broadcasting much more to oversee transparent financing, because even though it's only about financing and it's basically just the realization of the competition policy of the European Union, but all the safeguards that are formulated in that communication, if they are consequently enforced, they would nearly completely prevent an abuse of broadcasting power for propaganda purposes. Plenty of submissions have been launched by Hungarian civil society for the Commission either asking the application of the communication on state aid or, well, also on other terms. But as the Hungarian media budget is still very minor in comparison to European Union resources and budget in general, this was not really a priority. It was not dealt with. So the Commission didn't act upon these submissions. But I think that if now the EMFA, which is a hard legal instrument, if that is being employed in court, then the communication could be invoked as even as a soft law, as an interpretative guidance on how financing of public service broadcasting should be made according to European Union legal standards. So thank you. I'm open to comments and questions. And I'm collected some links and information to support the arguments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Judith. Now I give the floor to Josef Lusser for his reflections after having heard two cases that are not actually the best ones. So please, Josef, the floor is yours.
We cannot hear you,
I cannot
Josef.
yeah. Is there a problem? No, you are unmuted, but we cannot hear you.
No, no sound.
We cannot hear you. Urbano, before it was working, wasn't it? When we tested it.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know, can you try with another microphone and headphones? Is Giulia online? Can we ask her if she has any suggestion? Okay. Maybe we in the meanwhile, while you maybe Josef try to solve the problem with the microphone, we could briefly start the debate, and I maybe ask Renate to start with her comments if she's okay with it.
It would be better afterwards because my comments are actually in response to what everybody says, but if we wait, I can just start and then we can go back to that. But maybe if there are any questions, Elder, beforehand from the audience, maybe we start with that and then I can just come along.
Yes, I think that Pierluigi wants to intervene, and then maybe, yes, we can open the floor for comments. And please, Josef, maybe can we put Josef in contact with someone that can may give some advice on how to resolve this technical problem? Urbano, I look at you. Thanks a lot. And thanks, Urbano, in general, for helping in the organization of these EMFA talks. Please, Pierluigi.
Yes, well, good morning, everybody. Just a few words on comment on Article 5 and also what we just heard about Article 5. I think that Article 5 is there are at least two levels in which we have to face Article 5. One level is to take it as the rest of EMFA as an article of principle in which the European Union is saying to its member states, media policy is not anymore something that is fully in the hand of the states, because we have some European standards that are more precise and go beyond the international standards that we already had before, through international treaties and so on, because the Union wants that this media system and this information system is a quality system that helps democracy, helps the public discourse and so on. And so the whole EMFA is a principal instrument. Then there is the issue of how precise and helpful could be the single articles, and that somehow this is the double standard we are discussing in this EMFA talks. And Article 5 clearly is an article that goes to a precise point, that is the independence, credibility, relevance of public media services, and says certain things. Professor Vigevani summarized them very well: independence of management, security of funding, independence of the regulator that oversees the public media service system. And these are the elements. We know that this article is one of the ones that gets against a reality that is much more complex and much more difficult. So my idea on this article is that we should take it as an article of principle in general, as the rest of EMFA, but also as an article of indication. The problem is that having an article of indication... Sure.
Okay, now it looks that
bleiben Sie noch dran? Okay, thank you. I just had our helper on the phone. They helped me. Sorry, I did not want to interrupt. Do you want me to make the presentation now?
Maybe we ask Professor Parco to finish. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. I was saying, being an article of indication is complex in Article 5, exactly because, like most of EMFA, gets against the tradition of member states, in particular the fact that they don't have the public media service and they don't have systems. And we are seeing some of these systems. Some of them are very bad, as was just explained in a couple of cases. So what I think is that we should concentrate, and probably something that we could do to try to help the European Board of Media Services and the Commission for the future, on what are within these 27 examples, what are the practices that could be accepted? What are the best practices? Which are the systems that, respecting a tradition that is a national tradition, however, are somehow respectful or aligned with what the principle of EMFA are saying. And I think that this should be the effort of the academia, of the intellectual, of the civil society, and so on. Try to get to indicate which are the good examples and try to say, okay, these are different models, but they are all acceptable, more or less, with what the system is proposing, the EMFA law regulation is proposing. And once we have more clear what are these systems, we know that there is no perfect system. There is a very difficult question, the question of independence of public media services. It's like the independence of regulators are complex, because in the end, the political recognition and the democratic recognition are very different, very complex elements. So in the end, it is a very difficult problem. But we know that there are good examples. We should understand better this example, put a menu of good examples, and then say, okay, these are examples that could work. And then, obviously, also tell the countries that are out of line, these are examples that cannot work. These are out of the principle. And then, and this seems to me very clear and very key, the Commission has to be ready. We know that it's a regulation, so even private citizens can try to enforce directly the act, but the Commission has to be ready once the ideas are more clear, what the European Board of Media Services has clarified what are the acceptable standards. The Commission has to be ready to open infringement procedures, to use Article 258 against the cases that are disaligned. They may be more than one, they may be more than what we expected when the act was designed and conceived, but that's what is the challenge. If Article 5 has to be used really and change the reality of our public media system in Europe, the Commission has to be brave and go after all the cases that are outside an acceptable design. It's not a question to impose a system, a precise system to everybody. There are many systems that are okay in Europe. We should help to identify them, but then the countries should be within this group of systems to be acceptable and to be in line with the spirit of the EMFA. So what I'm suggesting is let's try to take the Article 5 indication seriously and follow up on them. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierluigi. So we can try then to have the presentation of Josef Lusser.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Let
can.
me then, hold on. I present. Now you should see the presentation in a second. So can you see the presentation now?
Not yet.
Ich habe Teilen und erster Schirm. So I'm sharing my screen. And now you should be able to see the
I
presentation.
see myself. Oh.
Can you see the presentation now?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to you.
Apologies for the inconvenience before. I saw and I heard from the presentations before that you are all familiar with the EMFA. So I can be very brief in this point. The objectives are the strengthening of the internal market for different audiences, including media service providers, such as a public service broadcaster as ORF that I'm speaking for in this session. Media service is defined as broadcast or press publications for the public under the editorial responsibility of a media service provider. And the media service provider is anybody, a person, legal or natural, whose professional activity consists, that bears editorial responsibility of the selection of the content. The EMFA in general is directly applicable. However, there are certain provisions that oblige the member states to take legal implementing measures. I will give you the presentation afterwards, given a lot of examples that in the Austrian legal system, where there is no application, no amendments necessary, amongst them Article 3, 4, 8 to 19, 20, 21, and 24 of the EMFA. Also, there are other departments and ministries involved. For example, for the implementation of the Cartel Act, it would be in Austria the Federal Ministry of Justice. The Competition Act, there is the Ministry of Economy, Energy and Tourism. And I will be talking about the implementation of EMFA in the ORF Act. The competency has changed from the Prime Minister now to the Federal Ministry for Housing, Arts, Culture, Media and Sport. With regard to EMFA, let me make a differentiation between EMFA 1, 2, 3, and 4, because there are different levels of actions necessary here. Article 5.1 deals with the independence of public service broadcasting. Article 5.2 with the independence of the management board or the managing director. Article 5.3 securing of financing, and 5.4 the independent authority. These articles were highly disputed in the process before they became law, but now they, in my opinion, constitute more fences to protect, more protection, in our case, 3 fences for public service broadcasting. So with regard to Article 5.1, that deals with the independence of public service broadcasting and the plurality of opinions, there are no adaptation requirements in Austria at the moment. That is because there was legislation from the constitutional legislator from 1974 that guaranteed in the Constitution the independence of persons and executive bodies or offices that are entrusted with broadcasting. The ORF Act, on the basis of that Federal Constitutional Act, therefore includes provisions for the independence of staff and organs of ORF. There's a newer regulation that says the independence is not only the right of journalistic and program staff, but also their duty. And since there's a double funding for ORF, including advertising, there are special provisions in the law that commercial communication must not interfere with editorial independence. The same is regulated for product placement and sponsoring. And there's a whole section on the independence of journalists. In addition to these legal provisions, there are other rules, amongst them an editorial statute regarding the independence of the people with journalistic work. And recently, ORF passed a code of conduct that also dealt and ensured the independence of the people entrusted with broadcasting. In addition, in a recent court decision by the Constitutional Court, there was a new system laid down for the composition of the governing bodies of ORF, and now there is a new, more remote from the state composition process underway, and new members of the governing bodies are being appointed at this very minute. However, as you all know, the governing bodies are not within the scope of the EMFA. So to sum this up, Article 5.1, there is no adaptation requirements in Austria. However, it provides for a new additional layer of protection. I'm coming to 5.3, securing the financing of public service broadcasting. Same applies here, but for other reasons. There was a Constitutional Court decision, a recent one from 2022, that for the first time stipulated that the Constitution guarantees for adequate funding for a functioning service public broadcaster in Austria. So this is like a constitutional guarantee as it was previously decided by German courts, but until 2022, not in Austria. However, this does not necessarily mean that Austrian Broadcasting Corporation is safe. It rather says there must be a public service broadcaster in Austria that's adequately funded. In the ORF Act, there are detailed provisions how to set the license fee, which is set by a proposal by the Director General of ORF, and the Foundation Council approves this proposal, and there will be a subsequent checks and approval by the external regulator. In Parliament, the dual funding was confirmed. However, there are further limits on advertising time on television and radio, and there are also limitations for online commercial communication. Having said this, I must note, however, that commercial communication on online services is allowed in Austria, because in other countries there's it's strictly forbidden to also present commercial communication advertising on online services. So again here, with Article 5.3, there is no adaptation necessary, and it provides a new additional layer of protection. Coming briefly to Article 5.4, the independent authority, the external regulator Com Austria for private and public service media is already in place, has been for a long time. There are adaptation requirements under other EMFA provisions, Article 6, 725, but no need to change the provisions with regard to ORF. So what is necessary to be done? There will be adaptation requirements regarding the managing director. The managing director, within the meaning of EMFA, is the ORF Director General. The current legal provision at the moment for appointment, there is only a few. The law says the tender for the appointment has to be advertised 6 months before the end of the term, and the application deadline is 4 weeks. And once you pick the person, the professional aptitude must be taken into account in the first place. So it's very few prerequisites in order to look for a new CEO at the moment. Also, the criteria who can be the Director General are not very many. He has to be 19, and he has to be able to prove that he has appropriate previous education of 5 years of relevant or related professional experience. And according to former rulings, appropriate previous education could be fulfilled by, for example, having finished the studies of law. How do you at the moment elect a CEO? Simple majority, an open ballot. Before, a 2/3 majority in the Foundation Council that elects the CEO was necessary, and also there was a secret ballot. The term is 5 years. Until 20 years ago, it was a 4-year term, because the EMFA also foresees specific regulations for the duration of the term. It can be challenged at the moment before the external regulator, which is the Com Austria. For the dismissal, even more simple, the Director General can be dismissed by a 2/3 majority of the Foundation Council. No other criteria need to be met. Also, there's no formal notification for the reasons. And that's it. So if there's a majority to dismiss the director, however, a 2/3 majority, the Director General, he can be dismissed under current Austrian broadcasting law, and this would not comply with the prerequisites of Article 5.2 of EMFA. So what is planned? The amendments in the ORF Act will be for the appointment. There must be more detailed tender and eligibility criteria. The Foundation Council must set out appointment procedures and therefore change its bylaws. And for the dismissal, there must be dismissal criteria. For example, if the appointment requirements are not met anymore, if the CEO is permanently incapacitated, if he's convicted for a criminal offense, or if there's a gross breach of duty. Also, the notification of the reasons shall be given in due time, and there should be legal recourse now to ordinary courts. So what does that mean in practical terms? We have a management director at the moment and the management board. However, the Director General, management director, would be within the scope of EMFA, and the directors, for example, the technical director, the program director, the radio director, commercial director, as well as the 9 regional directors, would not be in the scope of the EMFA. What about the necessary quorums? At the moment, in order to pass a decision in the Foundation Council, 50% of 35 members must be physically present. And the consens quorum, in order to pass a valid decision, is defined as a simple majority and as a 2/3 majority in certain cases. One of those certain cases, the 2/3 majority at the moment, is for the dismissal of the Director General. And what's being discussed right now, that with the implementation of the rules of EMFA, that reduction of the 2/3 majority could be a simple majority, of course, in connection with the dismissal criteria from the EMFA in the future. What does a simple majority mean for people who are not accustomed to that? The simple majority is the number of votes after invalid votes and abstentions are deducted. I'll give you a very hypothetical example. If out of 35 votes, 32 people decided to abstain, 3 would be left, and if 2 were in favor and 1 against, there would be a 2/3 majority achieved. necessary amendments to the ORF Act. At the moment, the Foundation Council approves on a voluntary basis something like as election regulations that foresees a search in national and international newspapers, an online search. There is a notary public involved. All applications will be uploaded on the Foundation Council's internal website, and also not mandatory at the moment, there will be an internal and an external televised hearing of the candidates. Under the future rules and EMFA rules, there must be much more detailed tender and eligibility criteria. The Foundation Council will have to change its bylaws in order to fulfill these necessities. There must be in the future a transparent, open, effective, and non-discriminatory process, and there will be a broader legal basis for challenging the decision. With regard to the dismissal, as I said before, 2/3 majority is enough, no further criteria, but I must say it has never happened. No DG was ever dismissed with a 2/3 majority. However, for directors, a simple majority is necessary, and the proposal of the Director General. So the simple directors have been dismissed without further criteria with a simple majority. The dismissal of the DG under EMFA rules, again, there must be concrete dismissal criteria in the Act. I already mentioned those criteria. The notification of the reasons will be necessary in the future. And in connection with these dismissal criteria, a simple majority is proposed, but not yet passed. On the other hand, that would mean there is no dismissal possible if the dismissal criteria are not met. And the legal recourse in the future would be to ordinary courts. So what will be the discussion? The discussion of this new proposal will be whether the dismissal criteria are exhaustive, taxative, we call it, or not. The decision of that is that they're lowering the consensus quote for the dismissal. Is that mandatory under EMFA rules? Is it useful? Is it justified? So the simple majority proposal in the Act is not yet politically through. And of course, there will be a discussion on the effect of the dismissal if challenged in court. So in the future, all dismissals can be challenged in court. However, do they take immediate effect and the CEO is gone? Who will then lead the company until the final judicial decision is reached? And practical things like that will be discussed. So the next steps, the information of the stakeholders, including ORF, was already given by the federal ministries in May. We heard that a very fast implementation of the EMFA rules in Austria are planned. There will be a legal review procedure of the ORF Act and other acts for the public, maybe next week. Afterwards, the ORF Act will be passed and the Foundation Council will have to change its bylaws. So that could mean that under the new EMFA rules, Article 5(2), the appointment of ORF CEO, you can see this is a short view of the boardroom where this will happen, in 2026 will be more transparent and hopefully less political. With this, I come to the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much indeed. This demonstrates somehow that it is possible to speak and to have a discussion about Article 5 of the European Media Freedom Act, and this should be taken as a positive experience, at least, I mean, from what we see. My question is, who is proposing these amendments? Probably I missed it, but is this an internal discussion within ORF, or it's a public discussion about the changes?
Do you want to answer me right now?
Okay.
No, these are proposals by the ministries that are involved.
Yeah, okay.
And this is before the official process of lawmaking will start, which will start, I think, next week. So then it will be published, and then everybody can give their opinions to that. So that will be the proposal of the ministry.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you very much. So, Renate, no, I give you the floor for your comments. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Ada. Thank you, everybody, for these very different and very interesting contributions. I would have said the same as Ada just said. I think, Josef, you showed us that it is possible to do these things. My question was also regarding the consultation. I hope in the public consultation also the journalist organizations will be involved. It's very interesting to see that it foresees more independence for the journalists in terms of both rights and duties. There is a lot in there. There's probably a lot of questions still, and then, of course, a lot of interpretations. But generally speaking, also after all the turmoils we had in Austria with the FPO, where we already were afraid to lose the ORF, it gives us hope. But you also rightly say it's very generally, it talks about PSM. It doesn't talk about ORF. So there could be another government deciding we will have not ORF, but something else like we had in Slovakia. And then it all would be very interesting. I think the discussion we had so far also shows how, on the one hand, important Article 5 is, even though, and I'm sure we all agree that the language, as Pierluigi said, the language in general is very generic, but I also in Article 5, it's a mixture of very concrete, but then generic language, part of it leaving to the member states saying the aim to guarantee, and I think that's probably where we have been most disappointed, because to interpret the aim to guarantee is very wide, and I'm sure with this interesting illusion Judit Bayer shoulders on Hungary, the Hungarians will of course say the aim to guarantee, we follow the German law. It looks on paper all very beautiful, so that's why I thought it's really very, very interesting indeed. I first want to say for our affiliates, the fight for independent public service media and its financial sustainability is extremely important. That's why we also started a campaign, because as the Media Pluralism Monitor also confirms, unfortunately in the EU, there are almost half, 11 member states with high risk when it comes to the independence of public service media. And I think this is also the reason why we have this article in the EMFA, even though it hasn't been easy at all, because we know that public service media is a very national issue, and to get that into the internal market logic has not been easy. Having said that, the first drafting of the Commission was rather weak, and I think it's really thanks to the European Parliament we got it stronger. The member states then added the aim to, but all in all, we are still rather happy to have that. Because it just shows also politically speaking the special significance giving to public service media within the whole information sector, and I think that can be used in future argumentation as well. Good practice, Pierluigi, I normally always agree with you, but it's very nice to have, but this is very EU language. We always talk about good practice and it's not good enough. I mean, of course, the Austrian can be shown, but we also see specifically when it comes to public service media, it's very national. There is a lot of national culture in there. There's a lot of interpretation from the language. As we see, the German almost law interpreted in Hungary hasn't helped. So I'm a bit afraid here. I do think some sort of guidance from the EBU, but yeah, I wanted to say from the Commission, but also from the EBU, because I think the EBU has shown a lot of expertise in here, could really help also in Italy. One thing regarding Italy, because we work a lot of that with our members, the positive thing is, I think at least in our circles, there's a lot of noise at the moment. And the politicization of the RAI, which is not new, but which has been intensified, is now seen as a political game also by the opposition. and thereby it's seen to use the EMFA to really reform. How serious that process is, we don't know, but also our union, Jusigrei, is really doing the utmost to use the text and make reform possible. So I think that shows that we have to do everything we can to guide them. In the end, probably, it will be a question of both domestic laws, but then also, as was said by most of you, that going to the European Court of Justice, once again, and Elda, we've had it a lot, I'm afraid, when we discuss the different articles, that we say we need case law. We don't even need guidance, but at some point, and we know it will take a long time, but it will be very important to have such case law that hopefully guides member states in the right direction. I don't know if I had anything else. I think we also have to add, and maybe this is also a question to the legal expert, the recital 31 of the EMFA, which maybe gives additional support and argumentation for the importance of the different articles within Article 5. I can only say I think it will be very difficult to deal with the sub-article on financial sustainability. But when we look around at the moment, our colleagues from Finland, from Sweden, I mean, it's not only Central Eastern Europe and the South, it's all over that PSM is being cut. And you can be independent, but without resources, it won't work anymore. And this is, of course, a global issue on how to reform public service media, that it has its relevance in the future, that there is sustainability, that new formats for young people, media literacy, and all what's important for public service media is also possible to do in the future, because otherwise it will wither away, as we had in several countries where it just has no relevance to the public anymore. So besides this article and the legal interpretation of it, of course, there is much more around to protect public service media in the future. I don't have to say, I don't have many other issues at the moment, so maybe, Elda, we can open the discussion. I would like to know from Josef what he himself thinks about this proposal by the government. Do you think it's enough? Would you like to have it improved? Or that, I think, would be very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Renate. And I wanted to pose the same question to Josef as well, whether he feels that somehow this discussion in general is a potential, may lead to a potential improvement of the law, and whether Article 5 is a good addition, I mean, to ORF. And I see, in any case, that there is Giacomo Mazzone that has a question or a comment. Please, Giacomo, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I have, one comment and two questions. The first question is, the Commission said in a meeting that was at the beginning of the year with the Parliament that they will send a letter before the August deadline to the states that looks not to be in line with the EMFA provision for public service media. Do you have any information if this happened, or if it happened for some countries? Because I'm trying to track the letter to Italy and I haven't found any evidence. I want to know if this is the case for other countries.
Maybe I can. Yeah, sorry, you go on. Yeah.
Oh, please go. Yeah, if you have an answer,
just
I buy
coming
it.
from, I think the only one from Brussels, the Commission told us that they're doing these fitness checks, very sexy name at the moment. They also said they are, I think they went already to Italy, And based on that visit, they would then react and possibly write letters. But I haven't heard anything from the letter, but I'm happy to ask them again as well, since I'm in quite close contact with.
Yeah, because this is because we are discussing with other partners eventually for reaction and make something public in order to attract attention on that, and it would be useful to know if there is such a move from the Commission or not. By the way, we have next Monday in Paris the meeting of Eurovisioni, and probably we will decide to have EMFA as the main topic for the October symposium in Rome. Apart that, the other question is about there is a high risk that countries, Renate, you mentioned 11 countries that apparently are not in line, if I am correct. What if this country decide deliberately not to answer? The procedure for infringement could be very long, as we have seen in the past. There is anything that what Enea suggested before, that could be an initiative coming from the court, could be the shortcut to solve the issue? Thank you.
Okay, let's collect other questions, if any. Is there? Are there other questions from the floor? I don't see any raised hand. Luigi Malferrari, please.
Hello, everybody. I hope my camera is working. Thank you very much to the presenters for the super interesting and very topical presentations. I wanted to make a couple of points and then in light thereof raise a question. So first point, I wanted to react about what Renate said about the Commission's proposal. I think it is not a fair depiction to say that the Commission's proposal in Article 5 was very weak. In fact, it was very similar to what the final result was. It's true that Council and Parliament worked together with the Commission to refine the text, but the main guarantees were already there in the Commission's proposal of Article 5. Second small comment I wanted to make, so on the legality of EMFA, we don't need a national judge to refer the question to the CJ for the simple reason that that Hungary has already made that step, bringing an annulment action against the legal basis of EMFA, so that there will be clarity on that front. The third point is about the infringement procedure, which Pierluigi rightly advocated. And I don't know whether the Commission will have sufficient strength to bring infringement procedures against member states for violations of Article 5 of EMFA. I think the safer bet will be to rely on litigation before national courts. And then that is my question, how to make Article 5 operational. So we've seen that Article 5 lays down in its vast majority, almost all of the provisions are unconditional and are directly applicable. They create rights and duties which can be invoked before national courts. The fact that there is a discretion regarding for member states in choosing which ways to put these obligations into practice does not exclude the direct applicability of Article 5. There's plenty of case law on that point. Article 5 is not only setting out aims, it is also setting out obligation de résultat. You see it just by reading the provisions. Member states shall ensure. Now, shall ensure means that they need to do certain things. And the question is, and this is my question to the speakers, who can then invoke the violations of those obligations? And just to break down the question in more concrete terms, I'm wondering whether, for example, the trade unions, Renate mentioned Usigrai, could the trade unions bring proceedings before national judges? Because, of course, we need to think a little bit also in terms of local standi under national procedural rules. Another question would be whether the receivers of the media services of public broadcasters could bring proceedings. And there, my question would be, can Article 5 be used by users of media public services themselves directly? Could it maybe be used in conjunction with Article 3 in the sense that Article 3 gives a right to recipients of the services, and a recipient could say, well, I didn't get a editorially produced content from the state, because the state is indeed, well, the public broadcasters are part of the state. And the reason why I didn't get this editorially independent content and pluralistic content is because the state has violated Article 5. Maybe there are other ways. Maybe you thought about other ways, or maybe it's worthwhile to think a bit about other ways, because August is coming up and the problems are many, especially in Italy, but also in Hungary. And by the way, on Hungary, I don't think it is, how can I put it? I mean, in EU law, we look at the substance of issues, not the construction. So I learned a lot from Judith's presentation, but so the public broadcaster is not this strange foundation, but it is the real entity that does the broadcasting, and the compliance with Article 5 will have to be assessed with regard to that entity. So I've talked a lot. These are my questions. So the operationality, how to ensure, how to make Article 5 operational before national courts. Thank you.
Yes, I think that in this regard, we have already an experience in Italy to some extent. And Giacomo, I see your raised hand. No, it's an old one. And well, just a comment, and then since we are closing, I'll give the floor to the speakers for their last comments. I mean, Article 5 somehow, at least in my opinion, is one of the easiest to implement, or I mean, to understand in this sense, because really there is a lot written about this principles that are envisaged there. And we have a lot of standards of the Council of Europe ourselves. I mean, while we implement the media pluralism monitor, use indicators that are very much in line with Article 5 and try to give some guidance in order to allow the country teams that do the research to assess whether some principles are fulfilled. For instance, probably, I mean, considering how it is implemented then in member states that are different with different cultures, it's not maybe so straightforward, but definitely when it comes to resources allocated, adequate resources to be allocated to PSM, there are some, let's say, more objective standards that could be considered, starting from the multi-annual framework of funding to the limit that comes from not overfunding the PSM. So there are several standards, but I don't want to still much time, and I give the floor again to Giulio, Judit, and Josef for their final remarks and for answering the questions. Thanks.
Yes, many questions, 3 minutes, I try. I agree with Pierluigi Parco. Article 5 is an article of principles, but it puts European standards obligation, as you told. More, there's not a problem. Public service media are deeply rooted in history, in national history. And so it's difficult to have an importation of models. But the rules provided perhaps are not directly applicable, I agree, but are quite detailed provision. So commission should be brave, I agree, but also judges, constitutional courts, and European courts should be brave. Better, they have to apply Article 5, not more. And for example, the Constitutional Court in Italy now could declare Italian law unconstitutional, causing violation of a regulation. It's a sort of new jurisprudence, very interesting. And so what Luigi said, how can invoke violations in front of a judge? We need, and we tried to do, but without success, a civil or administrative or even a tax case. Tax could be the best way to call the Constitutional Court and the Court of Justice to judge about the compatibility between, in our case, Italian law and European regulation. So I think it's not impossible by now, from August. Renate say in Italy the positive is that there is a lot of noise. That's true. Why now? The link between politics and RAI is very old. You know, we invited in, I think, 70s, a special word for the allocation of RAI positions among parties. The word is lottizzazione. And we invented also sort of mathematical formula to divide the seats among parties. Now, something is changing. That's the reason of the noise today. And there is a stronger direct influence from the government, it's true. And there is a sort of revenge by far right, once excluded from the center of power. And so the facts are quite impressive. We saw the removal of well-known personalities and so on. So I think that the noise is real. I don't know if the opposition and the civil society and so on have the strength to continue this tentative to create a public service more independent from politics. I don't know, to be honest. Giacomo asked something that I don't remember, so I finish.
So you don't answer. Yeah. No. It's fine. It's fine. We are running out of time, so if you don't mind, Giulio, I pass the floor to
absolutely.
And
thank you so much.
Thanks to you a lot. And maybe can I ask you to keep it in maximum 3 minutes, so we close before everyone leave. Thanks.
Is it for me?
Judith, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I try to be very brief. So one reflection just on what Renate Schroeder said, that you're perfectly right on the one hand, that it's not good enough to have just practices, but perhaps certainly more than nothing, because as Professor Mancini used to say once, you can't change the media system without changing society. So probably these societies will never have a media system like Germany or Denmark and never have a public service media. But still, there are levels of governmental propaganda, from a mild loyalty for governmental policies to hate speech and disinformation, which is currently happening in Hungary for the past, 10 years almost. So this is certainly unacceptable, even for the Hungarian society. So all is left is to fight, because it's up to the political intention, after all, how to interpret and twist out the words of the law. And then to Luigi, well, I think you know better than us, Luigi, who can initiate, or who should be able to initiate a legal complaint. And Article 3 is a viable option, but I think it might be a bit indirect to refer to the plural media system as such, because the government has done a case saying that, oh, there are many other media service providers. Well, that's actually not true, but there are some online media outlets which are independent. Still there is an indirect connection. And the bigger problem is that in Hungary, if we start a procedure in the Hungarian national judicial system, the judges, because of the lack of judicial independence, are thought to be unlikely to submit this preliminary question to the ECJ, because they are under pressure. So there have been already reprimands against the judge who did so. So it's not certain to happen. And I have another idea. I would like to roll the back over to you, because whether commercial corporations could initiate, similarly as we had it in mind back based on the communication of the Commission in regard of state aid, because EMFA's justification for regulating public service television is also based on the internal market argument, saying that the commercial media corporations have a worse situation when the public service television doesn't have an appropriate monitoring of using the resources and spreading disinformation and such. And whether commercial corporations could initiate a procedure, perhaps directly at the Commission, based on EMFA 5. That's a question. That's my contribution. Thanks.
Thanks. Josef, your final remarks. Thanks.
Thank you, Elda. Coming back to Renate's question, this public review procedure that's going to start will be open to the public. So certain sectors, all kinds of sectors will be included with a direct letter that they can give their comments, but it's open to anybody. Will be published online, and then anybody can give a comment to the proposals of the then government and parliament. To Elda's question and others, am I happy with the EMFA implementation proposals? I'm not going into the problem that we discussed at EBU level, which was the competency shift from member states to the European Commission, which was very much disputed. However, as I said before, I think there are additional protective layers for the public service system in many countries, including funding and independence. And since also the far right party that won the elections here, but that did in Austria, but did not win the government, they were in favor of abolishing the license fee in total, and that would not be possible anymore under the rules of the Constitutional Court and also under EMFA. So this does protect us. So this is very positive in my opinion. Also the criteria for the appointment and dismissal of the CEO are very positive, I think, because it's another level of independence. And at the moment, since governing bodies are not included in the EMFA regulation, there is, I would call it a half-hearted attempt to also make the composition of the governing bodies more independent from political will and interference. With Luigi's question, and I will finish with that, who will be able to start proceedings against violations under the EMFA and under the laws that are passed according to EMFA regulation. At the moment, there's a very low level for complaints. So it's competitors, consumer representatives and representations, and also individuals can complain personally before the external regulator. And also if a group of 120 people forms a complaint, it's even easier to form a complaint. So I can live very well with the proposals, I think. We will see what the public review procedure will produce and when this will be enforced, but we are prepared because we do have to change the internal rules of how the internal bodies of ORF will function in the future, especially when it comes to the election of a new CEO in 2026. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it was another fruitful discussion. I see a raised hand of Luigi. Luigi, do you want to say anything in 10 seconds?
No, sorry, it's my older hand, so my apologies.
I have the feeling that we just started the discussion and many other things should be said. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, and I thank you everyone for your interesting and insightful contributions. And I do hope that we will be able to put this video online, the video of this meeting, because I mean it's good that it could be seen and shared if all the participants will give us the consent to do it. And again, thank you very much, and maybe looking forward to the next opportunity of discussion. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Have a nice day.